Dave, do you remember a couple of shows ago we were talking about how Sha Na opened for Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, and we were having...
We're back on Sha Na. Okay, yeah, so Sha Na opened at Woodstock, yes.
This is becoming the unofficial Sha Na podcast for all your latest Sha Na news. Or would that be... or do we call that Sha Na news? I'm not sure what we call it. But,
Zingo, all right.
But, and you said, I remember you saying, how did this possibly happen that Sha Na could open up for Jimmy? And we both did a little bit of a riff on, Jimmy being just gobsmacked watching Sha Na singing at the hop before he's got to go on. Would you like to know, I did a little bit more research, would you like to know how Sha Na
You already know I would like to know. Yes, you already know.
Jimi Hendrix asked for Sha Na to open for him at Woodstock.
Shut your mouth. Bradley Geiger, shut your mouth.
It was a request. Jimi Hendrix requested Sha Na to open for them at Woodstock. Going now to Variety.com. A gig.
Holy crap. Okay, keep going.
A gig at the dingy downtown dive Steve Paul scene, which became a magnet for rockers like Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin.
Wait, what was that band? What was that band?
Led Zeppelin.
Zeppelin? What are you, a 1920s announcer? Led Zeppelin seems to be coming up on the rock charts, yes.
It was in their sophomore appearance that Led Zeppelin showed up. Attracted the attention of Jimi Hendrix, who dubbed them, quote, far out man, unquote, according to Jocko. You remember Jocko? He had the kind of the slick curly hair, Jocko?
Sure.
The guitarist tried to get Woodstock promoters to see the group, with the duo finally showing up at the clubs last night before it was shut down by local gang activity. They asked our manager if we wanted to play the festival. We just said yes, said Jocko. We heard about it all summer long on our local FM station, which was our version of social media back then. That's how we knew about it, and apparently that's how 500,000 other people's heard about it too. That's how Sha Na opened for Jimi Hendrix. They were the penultimate act at Woodstock. They were the next to last. Jimi Hendrix closed the show. Sha Na, penultimate act.
I can't tell you in all the different ways that this ruins my worldview. That Jimi Hendrix was like, I gotta get those guys up there.
Yeah.
What is happening in my world right now? This is amazing.
Yeah. Now, another story that I read, if it helps you any, Jimi Hendrix, big fan. The fans at Woodstock thought that they had gotten some bad LSD when this whole show started going. They did not react strongly to Sha Na, not as strongly as Jimmy did.
Oh, has your research also shown that the crowd did not react well? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. They from what I'm reading, that the crowd thought they were on, quote, a bummer trip, unquote.
That's how I felt every time I ever saw Sha Na, so that's great.
Yeah.
Brad, colored me shocked that a crowd covered in mud and virtually naked, half starved, and on massive amounts of drugs would not take well to 1950s greasers coming on stage in high knees.
And
I'm shocked.
Think about it. If you're a hippie in the 1960s, what do you hear from every crew-cut 60-year-old that's walking on the street? Hey, you hippie, get a job. And then Sha Na comes out and says, get a job, get a job. That was their whole opening thing, was get a job. That's what they were hearing from crew cuts all day long.
Well, yeah, like Sha Na, if you were 1969, if you were 19, 20, 24, Sha Na was your parents' music. You know what I mean? Like, that was what your parents grew up listening to, was greasers. Anyway, all right. We've now done 40 minutes on Sha Na and Jimi
Hendrix. If we have any more Sha Na news, you can bet the answer is going to be Sha Na no.
Yeah, exactly. I'm amazed that we spun it into 2 weeks for Sha Na, so let's just leave it at that. All right, well, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to ComicLab, the show about making comics.
And making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, editor of webcomics.com and cartoonist of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal, Dave Kellett, huge Sha Na fan and cartoonist of Drive and Sheldon and co-director of Stripped.
And this week's hour of comics advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, Let's talk welcoming back.
Let's talk welcoming back. That was very kindergartenly the way you said that. Let's talk hellos. How do we say hellos? Well, the folks that Brad's referencing welcoming back, starting up on another sponsorship, we're very happy to have Wacom over at wacom.com, makers of Cintiq and the new Wacom One, which, Brad, is coming in the mail for us today, I noticed on the UPS tracker.
Yeah, I've got my sign hanging out outside the studio for UPS. I have never once had a good experience with UPS. So although the tracking says it's coming today, I'll believe it when I actually have it in my hot little hands. But yeah, we're both going to be getting a Wacom One to test drive. And I got to tell you, I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, so Wacom is launching the new Wacom One, and they wanted us to try it out for the podcast. So here's the idea of it, and I like it. I'm here for it.
Yeah.
It's a small, super lightweight Wacom. It's like a 13-inch, a single cord connecting from your Wacom to your computer, and you can basically take it to a coffee shop. It's a simple, portable, lightweight, very affordable. Like I think it's around $400. Do I have that right, Brad? $400 or so?
That's the correct price range. Yes.
I like it when Brad becomes, yes, that's the correct price range. So I'm excited to try it out when they arrive and see how they work because, you know, as you guys know, Brad and I have the Giganto Wacom Pros in our studio, and those are amazing. They are the full featured. That's like the Lamborghini of the Wacom world. And this is like the fun bike on vacation Wacom that we're getting. Don't you think, Brad? Like a fun beach cruiser when you're at the beach or something.
Not only that, but I'm really looking forward to getting back some lost time with my Wacom One because one of the kind of hitches in my week is that I drive the kids to choir practice Wednesday evenings. And it goes from like, I've got to have dinner done. We got to be out the door by 5:30. It starts at 6. They can go until 9:30. We're not home until 10 o'clock. And it's unused time. I just have to sit there because it's too far for me to go back and forth. I got to sit there. You're
sitting there in your car rereading Twitter that you read earlier that day.
Exactly. You know, thinking, why doesn't anybody talk to me? You know, and
Brad, no Wacom is going to solve that problem. There's no bit of technology that's going to fix that.
Listen, I know better than that. That's why the Wacom, I can just do stuff that doesn't require anybody to notice me at all. You know, I could just be my happy self huddled up in a corner. But I can take back that lost time because I can load Clip Studio Paint on a laptop, set up in a little corner and bring a little like folding table. They've got folding tables set up there. Just sit down, bring this super portable tablet with me and get some work done. I'm really excited about getting that time back.
Yeah, I think when it arrives, I might suggest to Beth that we intentionally go work in a coffee shop just to try it out. So I think what we'll do is for the next podcast, we will do an unboxing, which might be kind of fun, Brad, when they arrive. Brad being in Philadelphia UPS, he might get that sometime in the next 9 weeks. I'm not sure.
I was going to say, since my tracking is today, I'll have it just in time for the unboxing when we record the show next Tuesday. It'll just be arriving.
Yeah, exactly.
As we fire up our mics.
So sorry about that, Mr. Geiger. We tried to drop it off 9 times. You weren't here. Meanwhile, Brad was there the whole time.
I'm telling you, when I got the Pro 24 this December, I bought it as a last minute kind of like pseudo Christmas gift for myself. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna make it through 2019. He says at December 27th, we're gonna make it. The year's gonna be fine. And I got myself a 24 Pro that I love. But yeah, the tracking for UPS says it's going to be delivered tonight. And I didn't want to leave this thing sitting out there. And so I stayed late, told Carolyn, do dinner without me. I'm going to stay. It's getting to be 6 o'clock, which is the cutoff time. They're going to be rolling down the street any minute. I'm sitting out in the parking lot and watching my tracking. All of a sudden, tracking goes bing, and it says, we tried to deliver and you weren't there. We'll try it again on the next business day. And I'm sitting there in the parking lot saying, you are liars. You are absolute liars. And of course, there's no way you can get through to anybody
there's no way you
UPS.
can complain to anybody. Yeah, no.
they've got an impenetrable line of defense between them and their customers. It's unbelievable. And so, yeah, I had to wait till the next business day. So I don't expect this Wacom one anytime soon. But believe me, when we get it, we're going to do an unboxing. You're not going to see two more happy people to open a box than Dave and Brad.
I think it'll be kind of fun. In true radio audio tradition, it'll be fun to hear Brad and I try to describe for you. All right, I'm opening up the cardboard now. The cardboard is being opened. Crinkle,
They're
crinkle,
using,
crinkle. All right,
like
there's a...
We'll do it golf style. Looks like they're using about a 5mm tape there. Yep, that's a 5mm.
Yeah, this is a triple ply cardboard. You don't see triple ply that often.
No.
Usually used with electronics mailing. So this is really nice, Brad.
That's really good recycled corrugated board, and I think we're going to probably use a paring knife. Yes, he's got a paring knife in his hand, opening it up. A big step up from last year when he was opening it up with. I think that was an incisor he was using last time. Nice job, him going to actual tools.
That's right. Well, we can also make it like an ASMR, Brad. That's what we can do. So.
Oh, ASMR.
Oh, I see Brad's handling the cardboard. He's got his cardboard. Oh, that's very nice, the way he's handling that cardboard. We're going to take a break, and we'll come back with Brad handling his tape. All right. Well, anyway, so we thank Wacom for sponsoring the show again this week over at wacom.com. Next week, we'll have the unboxing for the new Wacom ones, which will be really fun. But, Brad, big news for today.
Yeah.
Kickstarter just took their unionized vote.
Yes.
As you know, there's been a struggle over at Kickstarter even though they are a public benefit corporation, they have been holding back on allowing their employees to unionize. They just took a vote. And the vote, Brad, was 46-37 in favor of unionizing.
Yeah, I personally, I'm happy about this. I've said this on the show before. I've always worked for union companies when I worked in newspapers, and I always did demonstrably better than people that I knew doing the same exact job at other companies, at other newspapers. So I'm happy. The union, working for unions has never been nothing but good for me. So I'm hoping for nothing but the best for my friends over there working at Kickstarter. And I'm happy. I think this is going to be a good thing. This is the first major high-tech startup to unionize is Kickstarter. They made history in a way.
Yeah.
And it's really fun to see.
It's also, I love it when you get a little public sneak peek at a company like this. So just for funsies, the union vote was 47 to 36, right? How many employees, Brad, would you have guessed that Kickstarter had?
Oh my God,
because
I would have guessed 300, 350.
Yeah, for whatever reason, having an additional manager, let's say there's 10, maybe 15 managers and VPs working also on the floor.
Yeah.
That's around 100 employees. That's an interesting size for Kickstarter to be. I don't know why I never thought about what size they would be. For some reason, I thought it would be more akin to, 250. I don't know why I thought it would be more. But it's one of those things that shows you software companies that produce a tremendous amount of value, they don't necessarily have a lot of headcount,
Right.
And that's true with Facebook, Google. Google has a lot. Facebook has a lot. Don't get me wrong. But I mean, given the size and the impact that they have on the economy, it's always interesting to see how comparatively small headcount that they have versus like General Motors or Ford or Boeing, which is super labor intensive,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Anyway, though, it's fun. It's fun to see. And let's talk for 1 second, Brad, before we move on to our first topic this week. What kind of impact could you ever see this having on the cartooning world now that Kickstarter will be unionized? Because we could also see, Brad, in the near future, Patreon unionizing, or Indiegogo unionizing, or a few other tech service companies that unionize. And so what do you see as a potential impact for cartoonists or illustrators or creators using Kickstarter?
From the creator side, I honestly don't see a whole lot of change. Other than, if you agree with my stance on this, you might feel a little bit better about using Kickstarter. You might feel a warm, fuzzy feeling that your fellow people have a shot at maybe improving their stability and benefits and so forth. There is a possibility, and I have seen this happen, where management comes back and says, well, okay, we're unionized, and you know what that means? Prices are going up, and I hope you're happy. I could see that as a potential outcome of all this. But I got to be honest with you, and this is just speaking for me. Let's say Kickstarter says, okay, currently we take 5%, credit card companies take another 5% for a total of 10%. And now we're going to take 10%. And instead of a 10% total that gets taken off your Kickstarter, it's going to be 15%, right? 10% for Kickstarter, 5% for the the credit card companies. And if that happens, I got to warn you, Dave, if that were to happen, the effect on me and my business would be absolutely nil. It would mean nothing to me. It would mean absolutely, because you know what? I would build that into my Kickstarter. It's like, great, you're going to take, it's going to be 15 instead of 10. Wonderful. I'm still way better than I was back when I was taking out a loan at the bank to do a book run, right? And then hoping the book would sell.
Can I be Johnny Cynical for a minute? I feel like the margins at Kickstarter are such that they'd be really hard pressed to justify a 5% increase if they're paying better unionized wages, because my spidey senses, they're doing just fine off of their Kickstarter slice that they're currently getting. Don't you feel like, even though that they are a publicly listed benefit company, a public benefit corporation is their listing, they are still churning in a fair amount of profit on that business model. And like we said, their overhead apparently is not that much. They've got an expensive New York location. That's admittedly expensive. They've got overhead of 100 or so people. That's also expensive, by no disagreement on that. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I feel like they should be able to cover their newly unionized workforce and still not have to raise rates. But we'll be interested to see what happens in the near future. You know?
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what happens there, and what that might mean for other tech startups that are considering this, whether this is kind of a movement towards, maybe getting some better conditions for people working at these companies across the board. I think it's going to be a really interesting year. I'm very optimistic about what this means.
Yeah, this is an interesting possible canary in the coal mine for unionization of a lot of tech companies. You know?
Oh yeah.
And, honestly, not that this is the topic, but it would be interesting to see if Kickstarter down the road, because they are a public benefit company and because their business model is essentially, let's help artists and creators and inventors bring things into the world. Mm-hmm. It would be interesting if they were to down the road to take that German concept of one employee gets a representative on the corporate board. I always forget the German word. It's like mit best whatever it is.
Yeah, you can bet it's got syllables or more.
Yeah, if it's a German word, you can bet you're going to be hawking up a loogie while you say it. No, it's like, I don't remember the word. It's like mit I should have looked it up. But anyway, that idea that you take one employee representative and put them on the corporate board, I think Kickstarter would be the perfect example of a company that could benefit from that.
Absolutely.
But anyway, good for Kickstarter, good for the union. I'm proud of them and happy for them. I think it means better things for Kickstarter. And also, remember, as a creator, you'll be working with happier employees with Kickstarter now. And God forbid that your fellow men and women in this world live a happy and contented life. And so, anyway, all right, I think that's enough on that one. So let's talk about, Brad, some fun news for ComicLab coming up on October 2nd, Brad. Any particularly fun things happening for ComicLab on October 2nd?
October 2nd, I'll tell you exactly what is happening right around there is my wedding anniversary. Are you getting me something nice for my wedding anniversary in October?
Anything I can do to break up that marriage and claim Brad Geiger for myself.
No, I actually, the other exciting thing that's happening in early October is Peanuts, the comic strip, turns 70 years old, 70. The first Peanuts comic strip ran on October 7th, 1950, and it'll be the 70th anniversary of Peanuts.
And to celebrate, Brad and I and ComicLab will be doing a live show at the Peanuts auditorium at the Charles Schulz Museum up there in Santa Rosa, California. And man, if you're within drivable distance to the Charles Schulz Museum in Northern California, just north of San Francisco, I would highly recommend that you save the date and come join us. I think it's going to be super fun. I don't know yet if we're going to be doing any kind of signing afterward, Brad. I would imagine we'll do something small, but
I've got a
Very
signed
strong
pumpkin.
possibility that Brad and I will give a delightful talk. We might have some guests on stage. Not sure about that yet. But we'll probably all go out for a beer afterward. So if you are in the possible drivable range, save the date for October 2nd. We'll have more details coming up in the months ahead. And I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a good time. There's going to be a lot of great stuff happening this year, and this thing showing up on the radar has been absolutely outstanding. So, Dave, time for us to get down to business.
Brass tacks, let's do it.
You ready for this?
Let's do it.
All right. So, this question is coming in from our Patreon backer, Eddie DeAngelini. And he says, first-time listener, first-time question asker. He goes, I spent last year building up my email newsletter list as an additional way to reach out to fans rather than relying solely on social media. In a year, I've built my list from 500 to over 5,000.
Dang!
What I'm missing is a solid plan to utilize this list. What tips or tricks can you recommend for creating long-term and engaging newsletter content?
Well, first of all, let's talk big picture, which is that in a world where a lot of social media can go out onto the transom but completely escape an individual because either algorithms or the filter or the overall volume of what they're signed up for means that they don't see it, a mailing list, the old school email mailing list, is still surprisingly effective and has a really good return on investment for your time and your energy and your concerns. So I think both Brad and I would give a big, hearty endorsement towards building and maintaining a mailing list, right? So that's top of line. Now, how you best use it is, in some respects, a little bit dependent on your personality, but I think, as Brad would say for social media, a lot of those same rules would apply also to a mailing list.
Yes.
One, you want to make it entertaining enough where they're looking forward to opening it. It's not, they get enough emails like a meeting request, 11:30 in the corner room for the everyone bring donuts. It's going to be a long meeting. They get enough emails already, like business or corporate emails or reminders for school or all the things in their life that they don't want, Brad, the drudgery. Right. So, let's make this email, this mailing list email from you, exciting and fun and just dopey enough that it's delightful to read, to open up.
Go right back to the 4 C's of social media and apply them to your newsletter, right? Content, commercial, curation, and...
God damn it, you forgot it again! Brad Geiger! I was rooting for you. I was rooting for you with your 4 C's rules. I'm like, he's going to forget it. No, he can do it. Oh, God.
I cannot not say kindness. I cannot. What did we say? Consideration?
Compassion, maybe?
No, I thought you knew.
I didn't come up with the 4 C's rule. It's not my rule. Why are you throwing this on me? I'm the supportive friend that's cheering for you as you go up on stage during the talent show. I'm not the one that's a juggler. You're the juggler. Get up there and juggle.
I dropped my baton again. And kindness or consideration or whatever that 4th C is.
It's so funny how every time you do it, it's like, all right, remember, it's content, curation, commercial, and then kilogram. And you're like, no, Brad, that's not a C. It's not a C, Brad.
I don't know why I've got kindness just cemented in my brain. I can't not think kindness.
I'm going to email you a PDF that you can print out and post above your computer with the 4 C's on it.
Here's what your 4 C's are. But no, I think absolutely you make that something that is fun, that they look forward to. You don't have to overthink this. This is the same stuff that you would be putting out on social media. You can also take that social media that you've been doing and take the best of it, the stuff that got the best engagement, the stuff that really hit. Put that right in your email newsletter. Same thing with your content and same thing with your commercial. You do a best of the blog, do a best of the comic or whatever you're doing. Take some of that best of, and here it is. In case you missed it, your worst case scenario is that somebody's already seen it on social media, but then now they see it a second time.
Right. And the only thing that I would say is probably different with a mailing list versus social media or even your blog is the pacing with which you release them.
Right.
There is admittedly a different accepted schedule for a mailing list than for social media. Social media is the thought occurs to you, bing, bang, boom, it's out into the ether.
Yeah.
Blog is thought occurs to you, bing, bang, boom, it's up on your blog, right? That kind of thing. Media, getting a mailing list, I frankly, personally, this is just personal, subjective. Anything more than once a week, I'm like, all right, I've got enough for your mailing list. Unless I've signed up for like daily delivery of your comics, which is a different kind of feeling. That's just pure entertainment, right?
Right.
If it's a mailing list that's, let's say it's going to be like, here's where Brad's signing. Hey, here's a fun link that Brad found. Hey, have you checked out the new Brad book? Right? Like, so you can see the 3 C's and then plus the K happening in this mailing list. So as Brad is sending this, you can imagine though that it's kind of mostly a sea of text, right? And so getting that more than once a week, I would personally vote against. Don't you think, Brad?
Yeah. Yeah. I wouldn't go more than once a week. And there are very few people I want to hear from more than once a week. If that.
I would say I would add my own, let's make it a 5C. I would add my own 5th C to a mailing list. Oh, I'm just dragging Brad through the mud on the 4 Cs. My 5th C would be call to action, which is I would have every mailing list end with some kind of call to action. Hey, if you're enjoying the strip, maybe share it with a friend or family member. Yes. Hey, if you're enjoying the strip, maybe check out the book. It just dropped. Or, hey, if you're enjoying the strip, maybe check out my Kickstarter. Or maybe, whatever a call to action is, go join us on Patreon. Go rate us somewhere, this or that. A fun call to action, especially if it's low-hanging fruit. I would include something with every mailing list entry. Don't you think, Brad?
Yeah, and whatever it takes to make it easier for them to do that thing, whether it's a button or a link or what have you. If you're going to give them a call to action, make it easy for them to execute that action. Before we leave this topic, Dave, I have one more that was like an offshoot of this I wanted to throw in, since we're talking newsletters anyway.
Okay.
Somebody else had written in and said, how do you suggest I build my email newsletter list? How do I build my mailing list? Eddie maybe should be answering the question, because anybody that can go from 500 to 5,000 really knows more than me and possibly more than you. How do you build your email newsletter mailing list?
Well, a lot of it is the Willy Loman school of advertising, which is that attention must be paid. If you want to grow your mailing list, what a shitty reference that was. If you want to grow your mailing list, you have to mention it. You have to put it somewhere on your site pretty prominently, or with your social media posting or your posting of your comic. It has to be, hey, are you enjoying comics like this? Would you like to see more comics in your inbox along with some commentary? Sign up for my mailing list. Or, hey, do you sometimes forget to come to the website for weeks on end and wish it would come directly to you? Sign up for the mailing list. That kind of, like, you make it easy and quick and simple. And you'll find that the mailing list it does a lot of the work for itself, basically. Don't you think, Brad?
Yeah, I agree. I can't do anything but underline that and mention it wherever you can. You can even mention it on social media. Definitely have something prominent on your site. And don't forget, take a little sign-up sheet to convention appearances. And let people sign up at conventions. Sometimes it's nice to have that because, let's face it, at a convention, if you're not buying something, there's kind of no reason for you to be there talking. And that can be a problem to people as sometimes, because they're like, maybe they don't have money, or maybe you're not on their top 4, or maybe they bought something from you yesterday. That gives them something they can come up and do. They can perform an action. They can have a quote unquote reason for being there. And for no other reason than it makes them more comfortable. And then as they're signing up, you can have a chat, you can have a talk, and then move on, But I like the idea of having a sign-up sheet at a convention appearance.
And I will put one last capstone on this, which is that mailing lists a little bit feel like the resurgence of vinyl for music, in that when social media got started, and I'm saying for me, it was Twitter and Facebook at the time, when it got started a decade or so ago, I was like, well, there goes the mailing list. Social media is so much easier to just share my thoughts and people can get them right away. But I personally feel like it speaks to the failures of social media that people are now like, no, I actually like the mailing list. I actually liked the feeling of an RSS feed, and a mailing list is kind of similar to that.
Mm-hmm.
So a little bit like vinyl coming back for music, there is a subset of people online that are like, no, I genuinely like this mailing list. I want a mailing list. I appreciate it. A couple of things. I would suggest you sign up and try out Ryan North of Dinosaur Comics. He has a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Hillary Price of Rhymes with Orange has a good mailing list. Jake Parker has a good mailing list that he does from time to time. Anybody else you can think of, Brad, that has a good mailing list?
Dave Kellett has one that I think is outstanding.
What a sweetie he is, too.
Yeah.
What a gem.
Yeah, every now and again, you get that mugshot, and it's like, thank God I opened up my email today.
I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't even know how to respond to that. All right, well, Brad, I'm gonna jump in on one more question here to round out the smiles.
Yeah.
This comes in from our reader, Alexi, our reader, listen to us, our listener, Alexi, over at patreon.com/ComicLab, and it says, Brad and Dave, when you were starting your first long-form comic ever, specifically drawing it, did you have difficulty with starting that first panel? Or perhaps doing extra thumbnails because of nerves? Or perhaps kept redoing the same panel or page because you think it's awful and everyone will think it's awful? If you did, perhaps you have advice on how to tackle that problem? Or is that just a normal thing all creators do? Brad, take yourself back the very specific moment when you were, I guess let's try to put a line in the sand here. When you were relaunching Evil Inc., right?
Oh, okay.
Now, that's different for you because you knew that world, you knew the feel, you knew the line quality that you wanted, you knew the panel size, the characters were already nailed down. But did you have a moment of, ooh, I'm starting again, and I want it to look perfect, to live in the archives perfectly in amber,
Oof.
What was that like for you?
I didn't experience anything.
All right, we're going to skip Brad on this one. Never mind. I'm going to go to me. I'm taking the mic back. This is me handing the mic to Brad and then taking the mic right back.
No, I'm telling you, my eyes have always been on the horizon. I had so many things that were so important to me up on the horizon. And maybe looking back, I'm going to be the first one to say, maybe I should have spent more time looking at my first panel. Maybe I should have obsessed about that. But no, it was more about what I wanted to do, and that this was a step in doing that thing that was off on the horizon. I'll give you a really good example. This just happened a week ago. I celebrated my 20-year anniversary in webcomics.
Hey, congratulations.
20 years. I started on February 14th, 2000. And so I posted, this big Twitter thread about, some of the milestones and stuff. One of the things that I posted was my first Greystone Inn comic strip. And partially just so I can say, take a look at, how I draw then and how I draw now, how I built a joke then, how I write now. It really is proof of the thing I say all the time, which is it's hard to get worse at something you do every day. That first strip is really rudimentary in a lot of ways.
Right.
But when I look at that first panel, I don't remember pausing a bit about it. It was like, okay, here's the joke I need to set up. This is the scene it's got to be. Now draw it. I didn't. It's really interesting how everybody, for the most part, everybody was like, yeah, that's really cool to see. It was something that really resonated with people, I guess. Was like, yeah, we've all had a journey, and it's fun to see where this all began. But maybe I'm not taking this the way it's intended. How was your first strip?
Well, I think A, that's an honest answer, but B, I think I didn't anticipate, because you were transitioning from old Evil Inc. to new Evil Inc., it was essentially a road you'd already been walking down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it might be more helpful for Alexi for my answer in this situation, because Brad, when I launched Drive, I had been doing Sheldon online for about 10 years and online and offline for about 15 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I knew those characters. I knew that world. I knew comic strip creation. I knew how to do a 1, 2, 3, 4 punchline kind of a setup,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of that was old hat to me. And so with Drive, there were a lot of concerns and a lot of anxieties about not wanting to F it up when I launched it, right?
Yeah.
And so for the first page, I remember going back and forth a lot on, do I change my drawing style because this is a different kind of story? Do I draw differently, right? And I know that sounds silly, but Drive was going to be a very different drawing style. I have the pages somewhere that I could show you that I tested it out, drawing it very differently, and quickly abandoned it and said, no, I'm going to keep going the way I normally draw. There was 1,000 questions about whether I go full color or a single palette, and I ended up going single palette. And that was, a lot of it was the art of the possible. Like, I knew that I didn't have time to do a full color page every week. And I also knew that I liked the spectrum that blue as a tonal gives you, from the darkest darks of space to the lightest lights of a in terms of hue and value. But then also in that first panel, I just remember not wanting to mess it up. I was really concerned, Brad, that was going to sit in the archives forever, and that that would be the page that people had to start at. It was a long form story. You couldn't skip it. You couldn't just say, yeah, forget the first 3 years in the archive. You can just start reading Drive right now, in the same way that you could with Sheldon. So I actually do feel what Alexi is feeling right now, right? So I want to share how you get past that. But first, Brad wants to make fun of me, I think. So go ahead, Brad. What do you want to do?
No, I want to hear what you have to say. So in this Twitter thread, right? And where somebody in the first Greystonian strip, it makes a Garfield joke, right? And this person that I've never interfaced with before on Twitter at all makes this comment: do you really think it was a good idea to reference another comic in the first strip of your comic? I don't think that's a very good idea. And I said, I rewrote my response about 25 times, because the answer is, listen, dummy, I've been doing this 20 years. I've got 5,000 strips and comics in my archive. It didn't matter a bit that I referenced Garfield in the first Greystone Inn strip. There's 5,000 more. And I guess what I want to say to Alexi is the same thing. This doesn't matter. I don't think it matters a whit. It's not going to keep you from getting to your 20th anniversary. It's not going to keep you from building your archive. This is really the takeaway he had. Do I think it was a good idea to reference Garfield? What was he expecting I was going to say? You know what? It was a bad idea. I'd be celebrating 25 years today if I had started on February 14th, 2000, and made any other kind of a joke.
Right. I get what you're saying, which is the most important thing in all of this is to start, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the fundamental thing. Yeah. And Alexi, I want to tell you that was I feel riddled with anxiety and fear and doubt about, like, am I the right person? Can I do this? Is this achievable? Am I fooling myself? Yes. Just so you know, that's a universal. I was absolutely filled with all that. But I really wanted to tell that story. And I didn't know the perfect way to do it. I didn't know if I was the perfect artist to do it. But I really wanted to do it. And I had just enough joy and love for myself that overrode the anxiety and disgust for myself that the project got started, right? So you just need to nudge it over into positivity and get started. And then, as Brad and I have always said, once that page is up, start working on page 2, right?
Yeah.
And get to page 3, but get to page 4. Do I love the first page of Drive? It's perfectly fine. It gets the story started. Was there better ways to do it? Looking back on it, maybe. I don't know. The point, kind of to Brad's point about his first strip for Greystone Inn, I kind of don't care anymore. Now the story's going and it's humming along, and it's like, it's fine. Everything's fine. It's kind of like saying, like worrying in high school how your first day of 3rd grade was. Like, at some point, you got to high school. Who cares? Like, you did it. So at some point, you'll stop worrying about it, Alexi, is one way of saying it, And the way you stop worrying about it is by doing the thing.
Right. And here's another way of saying the same thing. There's nothing you're going to do. There's no first panel you're going to draw. There's no first page you're going to draw. It's going to be impossible for you to do something in your first page that you're going to look back 10 years later and feel good about? And if there is, it means you're doing something wrong because you're not growing as an artist. No matter what listen, the page I'm working on right now over there, I'm going to look back in 5 years and say, ugh, I should have done that, or I should have done some aspect of that, or I wished I would have tweaked it. And that's the only way that you know that you're getting better. If you look back on the stuff that you did 10 years ago and think, I can't think of a single better way to do that. That means that you might not have been growing over that past intermittent time.
Well, and I kind of thought you were going to say this, Brad, and I think this is an equivalent good way of looking at it. There is nothing you could draw in that first panel, no mistake you could make, no error of presentation or layout or style that is as painful a mistake as not drawing it at all, right? Yeah. Not drawing it is infinitely worse than drawing any form of mistake, any misstep in your first page or panel or presentation. So do it. Do the damn thing. You're going to be excited that you did it and move on to page 2, right?
Absolutely. Hey, if you're listening while you work, take a minute and stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, Brad and I are going to tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because, when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And an exclusive Patreon post that go even deeper on the ComicLab topics.
And access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And listen, if you can't swing a pledge this month, no worries.
You can still support the show by rating us wherever you get podcasts.
Leave us a 5-star review and a few kind words.
And that, along with mentions on social media, is incredibly helpful.
And now, let's talk comics.
All right, our next question, Brad, comes in from Stephen Barry over at patreon.com/ComicLab, and he says, Dave, I saw your tweet about college humor. What?
Can you believe this?
What?
Here, I'm going to hold it up to the screen. Can you read that, what it says right there from UPS?
Goodness. UPS delivery attempted while the show was happening?
I've got a sign in the parking lot that says delivery for Brad Geiger. Call this number. I'll come out, and I gave my cell phone number. I'll come out and sign it. All they've got to do is call the number. I'll come right out and sign it. Delivery attempted. Now I'm not going to get this. I won't have it in time for choir practice because of these mooks.
Can I tell you what honestly happened with a UPS delivery one time? So my studio faces the street. My specific desk has a window facing the street, right? Mm-hmm. And I had a live web page open of the delivery for, I don't remember what it was. It was something around Christmas, so it was like an expensive thing that I had coming.
Yeah.
And anyway, I'm watching the tracking for UPS, and literally, Brad, a UPS truck zooms by, and then about 50 seconds later, it said, delivery attempted, and I was like, you sons of bitches. You sons of bitches, delivery attempted. You drove by. That's all you did.
They're the worst. You know who I've never had a problem with? I have never, a single day, had a problem with getting a delivery from the United States Postal Service.
I know.
I've never had a single problem. There might be something because of weather, a delay, this or that. I've never had a problem with the Postal Service. UPS, I've never had a good delivery experience with them, ever. God, I knew as soon as I saw UPS, it's like, well, I'm not seeing that anytime soon.
Well, that ends up. Well, let me jump back into our question now that we've griped at UPS.
Now I'm going to be in a grumpy mood. Whoever this question asker is, they're getting grumpy Brad. I'm telling you right off the bat. Be prepared for
grumpy Brad, everybody. All right, so now we're going to get a taste of what it's like to be married to Brad Geiger. Here we go. All right, this comes in from Stephen Barry and says, Dave, I saw your tweet about college humor shutting down, reminding us not to rely on any particular social platform as a pillar of our career. What are the pillars you guys see each of your businesses are built on? Brad Geiger, this is a great question because it basically says, what are we leaning too much on, and how can all of us vary and variegate our business?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, so my pillars are real strong on the crowdfunding between Patreon and Kickstarter.
Yep.
To a lesser extent, merchandising, and that would include selling those books I've done on Kickstarter and so forth. And then the last part, which I'm still really kind of keeping a toe in the water, just in case something happens to one of those pillars, is teaching. I'm still teaching at University of the Arts. I'm actually teaching a high school class for the next 8 weeks at my son's high school, a comics class over there. And that it is not financial. I'm just doing it because it kind of makes my heart happy. But I guess my final pillar would be teaching. But I've taken comic conventions out because it was actually more of a negative than a positive for me. And advertising, as we've said a lot over the last 2 years, is non-existent. So my pillars are lopsided. If something happens to one of those crowdfunding pillars, I've got to improvise very, very quickly. How about you?
Yeah, I'm much the same. Social media, no, not social media, distributed fundraising and fundraising platforms have become a big part of my business. Patreon, depending on the year, is between 20 and 30% of my income, probably closer to 25-30% of my income. Kickstarter, also another 20-35% of my income. Sales of merchandise, I would say another 10% of my, or 20% of my income. And then ancillary original art sales, probably 5 to 10%. So within that, there's different channels. Like for merch sales, I have both my website, Topatico, Amazon, where you could, because I do Amazon Advantage to sell my books on there. Emerald Comics Distribution in the Northwest gets my books into comic book shops in the Northwest. So I try to vary it out. But the problem is, you can always have more legs under the table. Brad and I and Scott and Chris on Webcomics Weekly, we used to have this metaphor of your career is like a table, and you want as many legs under that table as possible, so that if any one leg gets knocked out, if any one of those pillars, in terms of the way our questioner was asking it, if any of those pillars gets knocked out, your table is still standing, right?
Right.
So if the only way that you make money is art galleries and your local art gallery goes out of business, well, you're screwed, right?
Yeah.
If your only way of making money is that you do a backup story in Marvel every couple of weeks, but then the editor that hires you at Marvel gets fired and you're gone,
right,
that's a big hit to your career, right?
Yeah.
Or if in Brad, in my case, if Patreon is big, 20, 30, 40, maybe 60% of our income, and Patreon suddenly goes belly up, then we're in deep doo-doo, you know?
Right.
And so here's the thing. If you keep that in your mind's eye of always having as many legs as possible, then I think you will be in good stead. I sometimes worry a little bit about how much Brad relies on Patreon, frankly, because I wish, but I say that with love. Like I sometimes worry about how much I rely on Kickstarter and Patreon. So it's not just looking outward and pointing fingers. I think we all have a duty and a responsibility to vary our income streams as much as possible. Don't you think, Brad?
Yeah, actually, Dave, I agree. And that's why I'm really excited about what I'm moving forward with finally this year. In fact, I'm very, very close to being able to throw the switch on it. And that is switching my site over to a site that much more closely reflects subscription content, to the extent that if something did happen to Patreon, I could switch that over to hosting those subscriptions myself, for example, and keep that same exclusive content experience going without Patreon.
Right.
And that's very, very close to being finalized. It's going to be a very, very different feel for the site, very, very different approach to webcomics in general, much more of a landing page approach. And it's going to have certain subsites that are devoted to exclusive content. You've got to have your Patreon membership and your Patreon login to access those sites. And also the archives, a big chunk of the archives, if not like 90%, are going behind as well. And those are going to become a Patreon $2 reward because, again, I need to make those archives work for me. I've built them. I've spent a long time building them. It's time that they used to do great under an ad network. Now they've got to work for me in a subscription network. And yeah, we're this close to launching. And that's and it's something that I've been working on for 2 years now, because I remember during the first year of ComicLab saying I was working on this. I went through 3 different web developers until I found somebody that really understood what I was talking about. And that's my. It's not foolproof by any stretch of the imagination, but that's a little bit of a safety net that I've started for myself. That if something happened to Patreon, I could switch over and still have exclusive content outside of Patreon.
Right, right. I should say this too. Like, it used to be in my late 20s to mid 30s that comic conventions made up like a third of my income.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually happy to say that now they make up 5 at best 10% of my income. Not
Yeah.
nine. No, I don't even know that I would stretch it to 10. I would say around 5% of my income.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of only do 2, maybe 2.5 a year now. And they're still valuable for me. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of why that's diminished and why other routes have proved better is that there has just been a better way to get books out to people than flying them around the country and appearing for 4 days at a comics convention. For the most part, for me, still San Diego Comic-Con is still a big winner because it's right down the coast. There's family down there for me. It's easy. Emerald City, boy, once again, I'm on the bubble about that one, but that's that one. Anyway, what I'm saying, though, is that as far as being the pillars of my business, the one thing that both Brad and I advocate, and if you could eavesdrop on our phone calls, one thing that we're always doing is like, wait a minute, how is this person making money? How are they, what are they doing? What are their income streams? Oh, let's figure this out. And Brad and I will literally private eye it for about 20 minutes, both of us on the web, like, oh, I see, they sell their books this way. Oh, they do original art sales via, oh, okay, now I see. Oh, and they also have a licensing deal for their T-shirts with so-and-so. Interesting. And we will literally try to private eye someone's career and figure out how they're doing it because it's both interesting to see how other artists are doing it, but also in the way that you're always wanting to keep your head on the swivel, it's good to see what pillars we are missing out on. What are we not adding to our business, right? And so I think both Brad and I would advise that for your own business.
Absolutely. And that's the key word there. Keep your head on a swivel. The way we do it and the way we've got it set up may work for us and might not work for you.
Right.
You're going to have to find the things that work for you. And I would encourage you to do that same private eye sleuthing. Take a look at people at a much wider range of webcomics and see what they're doing and see if you can add some pillars for yourself.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't mind saying it. Just don't be creepy about it. You could figure out how I make my living. Just look at all the different links off of my site, follow things around different aspects of my business, and you could figure out how I make my living. And there's no problem with that. It's all public. Just don't be creepy and be like, I see you, David. I see what you're doing.
Yeah. Only I can do that. So, Dave, I've got another question for you. From one of our $5 Patreon backers. And this is coming in from Red. It gets a little bit long, so I'm going to try to truncate it without leaving too much before. So here we go. I want to take, in terms of long-form webcomics that, if printed, would be considered graphic novels, how concerned should I be as the writer in regards to pacing? So here's what we're talking about, Dave. I want to take a couple chapters to build on the characters, establish some relationships, and get a feel of the world before jumping straight into the action. Since I'll likely be updating just once a week, would this be too slow of a pace for current readers who know, due to the synopsis, that the story will eventually take on an adventure psychological thriller feel and are itching to get out of the more slice-of-life chapters? When reading in one sitting, the pacing should work out just fine, but I'm concerned about a lack of hook and keeping current/present readers engaged as we build up to the fantastical elements. Is this something I should be worried about, or am I overthinking this? So, Dave, give Red some advice here. What we're talking about is something that would read in print form much more like a graphic novel. On the web, it's going to be printed or going to be updated once a week. And Red wants to take a lot of time with slice of life stuff that doesn't necessarily have a hook, but Red is going to put a synopsis somewhere on the site that says good stuff is coming.
Well, okay, so to answer Red's question, yes, this is something you should be worried about because I think this is actually handling it wrong. And I'll tell you what I mean. Like I'm starting a new television show and it's going to be a murder mystery every week. Every week's a murder mystery. Oh, Brad, but you know what? For the pilot, though, for the first 6 minutes, we're going to talk about horticulture when it comes to raising rosemary in your home garden. So we're going to do, it's just a quick 5 to 6 minutes about raising rosemary, how you want to plant it, how sun-facing you want your rosemary to be, you know, how far apart should you space your rosemary plantings. But then don't worry about it. We're going to get to a murder mystery, Brad. Every week's going to be a murder mystery. But we are going to do the first 6 minutes just about rosemary planting.
Eventually, somebody's going to die. Don't worry. Eventually, somebody's going to die. But right now, you want to make sure that the ground is nice and moist as you plant your rosemary. There's got to be some nice sun up in the sky, and don't forget to talk to your rosemary. Listen. So, at some point, there's going to be blood. We're going to need to solve this murder mystery. It's going to be a bloodbath. But for right now, what you're going to want to do is gently arc the rosemary planting towards the sun using a small, maybe tie-up system. And you're going to want your you're going to want to use a water drip filtration system. So, but don't worry, there's going to be a murder every week, Brad. I'm actually happy you brought up murder mystery because I'm going to use a little bit of a dated reference, but I think you'll be able to see where I'm going. Columbo. Probably one of the best murder mysteries of all time. Columbo, if they would have started with Columbo's relationship with his wife, which was very important over the years of that series, and it was a long-running series, it went for decades. If they would have spent the first several episodes going through Columbo's relationship with his wife, it would have gotten canceled and it would have never gone for decades and made Peter Falk kind of the household name that he was. Instead, it opened with a murder. Somebody died. And then along the way, we got to find out about Columbo's relationship with his wife and so on and so forth. But without that hook, and by the way, I know you think it's okay that you've got a synopsis somewhere that, by the way, 75% of the people that come through that site are never going to read that synopsis. What are they going to read? The comic. That's what they came for, was to read the comic. And if the comic doesn't make any sense, they're going to leave and they're never going to come back. They're not going to listen. When's the last time you went to a webcomic that failed you, that disappointed you, or any other form of entertainment for that matter? When's the last time you went to something that failed you and said, oh, geez, I should poke around this website. Maybe they've got a synopsis somewhere. No, you've never done that. You said, this website failed me, and you went on and did better things with your life.
Right. So I think what Brad and I are advocating is you want your story to start with the energy, the motion, the at least the forecasting of the energy and the motion and the action that the rest of your story is going to have.
Yeah.
So, for example, Star Wars didn't start in the desert with two robots slowly moving. It started with starships firing at one another, that kind of thing. And a massive ship moving through space, as I'm remembering the scene.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I'm getting at is you give at least a foretaste of what you're going to get, right? Or there's a million stories we could talk about that start in medias res, in the middle of the action, right? And then you work backwards and you build out the world, the feel, the background of the characters. Because if you start with now, you're going to get to the story, but hold on, we need to know these 28 things about this character before we can even start. No, read the synopsis. You're going to read the synopsis.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, if people are like me, and I'm a professional cartoonist that should read everything, I skip it. I shouldn't, but I skip it.
Yes.
Like, even in Watchmen, arguably one of the best graphic novel ever written, that whole side story with the ship and the pirate, I skip a roo, because I'm like, nope, not the comic. I know I should care. I don't care. I'm skipping this. I'm skipping this whole section.
This is going nowhere. I'm not going to gain anything from this. I'm sure it's delightful if you take a look at it from a literature standpoint. But no, and by the way, Dave, everybody skipped it. You're not the only one. You're not the only one. Everybody skipped that pirate thing. Here's the thing. Again, I'm going to go back to a couple of themes that have developed on ComicLab. Number one, your reader is sitting in front of a smorgasbord that has a conveyor belt, and they're just picking content. You've got to have something that makes you stand out. And I know you think it's okay that eventually the graphic novel, this is going to read great as a graphic novel. Your problem is that graphic novel is never getting printed, because you're never going to build an audience to support the Kickstarter, to support the print run that's going to make the graphic novel, right? You're never going to get there because you didn't do the most important part of writing, and that is make me care right now, right? You've got people that have got cat videos to watch, right? If you don't entertain them right now, they can go to sites and see one after another. They can go to a subreddit that they enjoy. They can go to Imager and they've got so many choices. You don't have the luxury of a slice of life for the next 3 months, especially updated once a week. You don't have that luxury. You got to make me care right now. And then the other theme, keep your readers on a need-to-know basis. In other words, all that slice of life stuff that you think is really important, it is important, but it isn't important right now. It's stuff that you can dribble out as we need to know it. And by the way, in the same way, I'm going to go back to Columbo, in the same way that we found out about Columbo's wife 3 and 4 sentences at a time per episode. But we've got this fully, at the end, we've got this fully realized picture of who this person was. That was done in drips over 3 or 4 sentences at a time over a long time. And I'm going to tell you, for that kind of side information, that slice of life stuff, in my opinion, that's the way to do it.
Yep. No, I think you're right. The basic idea here is that you can't get them past page 1 if you don't hook them on page 1.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to lead with the big swing, and a synopsis or background or basically character Bible information. None of that is going to get people in. Like there's no amount of background of any character that makes me want to go to page 2 more than the adventure or the action or the motion starting that makes me want to flip to page 2.
That's not to say that you shouldn't have that stuff. You should have an about page. That synopsis is great to have, because if you're doing comics right, then people are going to search for that stuff.
Right.
But to use that as a crutch and to use that to forgive writing that doesn't do the job of writing, which is to hook your readers immediately, it's not going to work that way.
Right. Well, I think that one puts I will say one more thing. I was going to put a button on it, but I will say one more thing. There's a lot of things as a writer that you just got to remember. You're writing it, but you're writing it for you. You don't need to share every detail about a character. A lot of the stuff that is important and critical to you is really characters' Bible story stuff or story Bible stuff. It doesn't have to ever appear on the page. So even though you think, it's very important to share this whole synopsis, and you got to have the whole background of the story of the characters, where they lived, what they did.
Right.
Some of that is just like, no, they need to know 30% of what you've created, but the key is editorially selecting what 30%, so they get just enough. They have an image of the character, and they can fill in the gaps themselves. You don't want to give them every motivation, every background moment, every character history moment. And so with that in mind, good editorializing can be your friend. All right, well, Brad, moving into to the next question, here we go. It says, Dave and Brad, I would like to make a long-form webcomic that is food theme. It's a thing. And it's kind of has an arc, but it's mainly about interesting foods and the human connections behind them. Should I aim for 1 page per week, or should I do the whole episode or whatever every month? And I guess by that they mean like posting a bunch all at once as an episode. What would be the post rate if I wouldn't post a single page story at a time?
The answer is yes.
Oh, very helpful. All right, well, that's been ComicLab, everybody. You've been listening to Brad Geiger. I'm Dave Kelly.
The answer is either one of those would work just fine. I don't see a problem with either one. The question is, which one of those works better for you, right? If you want to do this once a week and kind of promote it that way, and if you're able to write it in such a way that each one of those 1-page updates is going to be significant, in other words, something happens on the page that's important, if you can write that way, then that's probably a very good way for you to do it. If you can't find, if you're not able to do significance on every page, and I don't say that in a sneering way. It might not just be the way you write. If you need more pages to get to something that's significant, you now have the ability to post this thing as an episode and post many pages, and then by God, something's got to happen on that last page now.
Right.
If you're posting 10 pages, you've got no excuse for nothing happening on the last page. And you've got nothing stopping you from doing that. And what should your update schedule be? It should be whatever update schedule that you can do and maintain consistently with high quality. Because again, going back to that conveyor belt, it's not like the early days of webcomics when it was ad driven and we had to update every day. You don't have that now. You've got a social media publishing platform. Your readers aren't going to notice when you're not updating, although you certainly should be using social media to keep in touch with those readers and to keep the drumbeat going so that they're there when you've got that next chapter to release to them. But I don't think you need to feel that pressure to do weekly updates if that's not what you want to do. You can do it by the chapter. The answer is yes. And the only question is which one of those works better for you.
Right. I actually have no better angle on that than Brad. I think he's right that the answer is really up to you, up to your schedule, up to producing the highest quality that you can do.
Yeah.
And I think you'll know, you can, by the way, experiment with both. And you'll know within 6 months which one works better for your workflow. Which one, also, you want to remember which one brings you the satisfaction to want to produce the next batch, the next page, the next thing. Like, do you need the constant feedback? Well, then do one page at a time.
Yeah.
If you're okay with producing them all to a cohesive unit and that all hangs together and should be read together as a unit, then take the time to do it as an episode. And that's fine, too.
Yes.
But I think Brad and I would both say that it works however best it works for you.
Yeah.
And so a little experimentation and a little bit of willingness to try one or the other. And you can, if you choose, be upfront with your readers at first and say, look, we're going to try it both ways. Or you can just do it both ways, and that's also fine. So, but I think we both wish you the best on that. And,
and you know what, Dave? That's a really good point. You could do it as weekly updates on a website, and then you could mirror it on Webtoons where the expectation is a bigger reading chunk. And update it in chapters on Webtoons. There's nothing say you've got to do it the same across the board. You could absolutely do that. So yeah, the bigger question is what works best for you.
Right.
Now, Dave, speaking of things that works well for me, I got to read you this. This came in as a 5-star review from Wally Chair Mover, and I got to say, it worked for me in terms of putting a smile on my face. Ready
hold
for
on.
this?
That might be a screen name, but we can't just gloss over Wally Chair Mover. Is
Wally
a delightful
Wally Chair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to parse how those 3 little parts fit together.
Wally Chair Mover. That's a fun name. That feels like something out of a Willy Wonka story. Well, and there's Wally Chair Mover. All right, but what's the review? What does it say?
The title is "They Keep You Going," and he says, "These guys, let me tell you." I love the way he writes already. These guys, let me tell you. If you're just getting into making comics, have been for a while, or want to hear how a great podcast is produced, these guys will get you there. Their friendship and wisdom resonates on every episode. They are professional and personable with decades of experience and wisdom between them. I think, Dave, you've got the decades of wisdom and I've got the decades of experience. With decades of experience and wisdom between them, having come up from the infancy of webcomics to the early internet to now, they have the ability to adjust their own opinions and perspectives to better themselves. Leading by example, it would not be a waste of time to listen to this podcast. They really keep one of the best Patreon experiences around too, so make sure to check that out.
That's really nice.
Yeah, thank you, Wally Chair Mover.
I really appreciate that, especially on your 20th anniversary of your doing webcomics.
Yeah.
That is true, that we have been around since the infancy of webcomics.
Decades.
And knock on wood, we're not done yet. Hopefully we're still going for a while here.
Think about what a tagline that is, by the way. Between the two of us, 40 years.
Oh, geez.
Seriously. That's almost half a century.
We're a mid-level manager at a Quiznos with all of our experience, Brad.
I could only dream of being a mid-level manager at a Quiznos.
To be a mid-level manager of a Quiznos.
That was such a good joke. I thought it was toasty. You've been, boy, there's somebody that's been to a Quiznos. You've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my friend, the ever-delightful Brad Geiger, the editor of webcomics.com and the cartoonist of Evil Inc. at evil-comic.com.
And my good friend, Dave Kellett, co-director of Stripped and cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com.
And our sponsors, once again, the good folks over at Wacom, Wacom.com. We are excited to get our hands on and try the new Wacom One, the new portable 13-inch Wacom. And Brad, if Brad can fight the UPS, we'll see if we can get one in his hands. And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode and all episodes was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode.
And we've been loving all the recent ones. Thank you all for the 5-star reviews and the kind words. It's very nice of you. And, of course, Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/comiclab.
Yes? Yes? It's the UPS guy. I just wanted to let you know. Go fuck yourself. That was
I like how your version of the UPS guy a little bit sounds like Morty. I don't know, Rick. I don't really feel like I'm the UPS guy. I can't do Morty very well.
I guess I'm the UPS guy.
Oh my God! You should do the dad from the Russia meeting.
The Russian trip dad.
I guess I'm your UPS guy now.
I guess I got to get a signature, and I guess I got your phone number right here, and I could knock on the door, but well, I've got a Quiznos up the street. I think I'm just going to go to the Quiznos.
I feel like it's a lot of work to ask someone to have to knock on a door.
I'm kind of shy. I've got anxiety, actually. I've got anxiety, and asking people for their signatures makes me break out in the hives, I guess. So
I'll admit that I maybe didn't go to the best line of work as a UPS driver. I enjoy the driving, not so much the knocking on the door and the actual delivery of the package. If we could tag team this, where I could drive and someone could ride along a course, then there'd be another person in the truck, but maybe they could sit in the back. Maybe that'd be okay. Just sitting in the back of the truck.
You know the old story. Some people are get a signature people, and some people are not. I'm the not.
I guess. I guess it does require me actually delivering the package. I guess that's something I'd have to do at some point. But
my truck's getting pretty full.
That's the winning joke. That's the blow. That's the blow we go out on. Oh, truck's getting pretty full. Oh, shit.